Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
I'm Sandra, and I'm just the professional your small business was looking for. But you didn't hire me because you didn't use LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn has professionals you can't find anywhere else, including those who aren't actively looking for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role, like me.
In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you'll miss out on great candidates like Sandra. Start hiring professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/spoken today.
Since 2013, Bombas has donated over 100 million socks, underwear, and T-shirts to those facing homelessness. If we counted those on air, this ad would last over 1,157 days. But if we counted the time it takes to make a donation possible, it would take just a few clicks. Because every time you make a purchase, Bombas donates an item to someone who needs it.
Go to bombas.com/ACAST and use code ACAST for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/ACAST, code ACAST.
Hello, and welcome to Voices from the Battlefield, part of Waterloo Remembered. The next extract is introduced by historian Silvia Gregorio Sainz and consists of the recollections of Miguel Alava.
It is a real pleasure for me to join you today in this worldwide event to celebrate the 205th anniversary of Waterloo. My contribution to remembrance consists in sharing with you the extract of a rather forgotten report by the privileged Spanish witness and Wellington's close friend, General Miguel Alava. This text, dated on June the 20th in 1815, was originally printed in the Gazette of Madrid on July the 13th and translated into English in John Palfrey Burrell's official bulletins of the Battle of Waterloo in the original languages, with translations into English. General Alava is said to have been the only man to have fought in the two greatest battles in the period, Trafalgar and Waterloo. He was a direct eyewitness of the events that developed on June 18th, fighting side by side with Wellington as military attaché in the Duke's staff. The relevance of this text lies in the description of the military operations, and more importantly, in Alava's perception of the consequences this battle had for the world, Napoleon, and Wellington. Being his liaison officer during the Peninsular War, the Spanish general and the Duke had established a very close and long-lasting friendship that seems evident in this extract. After praising Wellington's military skills and performance that day, Alava shows the more personal human side of this figure that could not refrain from crying at the loss of so many lives. That is what I found more interesting. Being the only one in Wellington's staff to accompany the Duke at the famous dinner table in the headquarters on the night of June 18th, Alava also witnessed Wellington's state of mind after the battle and the impact it left on the Duke. But let me pass the floor to Alava himself. I joined the army on the morning of the 18th, though I had received no orders to that effect, because I believed that I should thus best serve His Majesty, and at the same time fulfill Your Excellency's directions. And this determination has afforded me the satisfaction of having been present at the most important battle that had been fought for many centuries, in its consequences, its duration, and the talents of the chiefs in both sides. And because the peace of the world and the future security of all Europe may be said to have depended on its result. The position occupied by His Lordship was very good, but towards the centre it had various weak points which required good troops to guard them, and much science and skill on the part of the General-in-Chief. These qualifications were, however, to be found in abundance in the British troops and their illustrious commander, and it may be asserted, without offence to anyone, that to them both belongs the chief part or all glory of this memorable day. At 10:30, a movement was observed on the enemy's line, and many officers were seen coming from and going to a particular point where there was a considerable corps of infantry, which we afterwards understood to be the Imperial Guard. Here was Bonaparte in person, and from this point issued all orders. In the meantime, the enemy's masses were forming, and everything announced the approaching combat, which began at 11:30, the enemy attacking with one of his corps and with his usual shouts the country house on the right. Lord Wellington sent fresh English troops who recovered the wood and garden, and the combat ceased for the present on this side. The enemy then opened a horrible fire of artillery, under cover of which Bonaparte made a general attack from the centre to the right, with infantry and cavalry in such numbers that it required all the skill of his lordship to post his troops, and all the good qualities of the latter to resist the attack. At this time, news arrived that the Prussian corps of Bülow had reached St. Lambert, and that Prince Blucher, with another, under the orders of General Thielmann, was advancing with the utmost haste to take part in the battle. Bonaparte, who did not believe the Prussians to be so near, and who reckoned upon destroying Lord Wellington before their arrival, perceived that in the critical position in which he was then placed, there remained no other resource but that of desperately attacking the weak part of the English position, and thus, if possible, beating the Duke before his right was turned and attacked by the Prussians. Henceforward, therefore, the whole was a repetition of attacks by cavalry and infantry, supported by more than 300 pieces of artillery, which unfortunately made horrible ravages in our line. At last, about 7 in the evening, Bonaparte made a last effort, and putting himself at the head of his guards, attacked the above point of the English position with such vigour that he drove back the Brunswickers who occupied part of it, and for a moment the victory was undecided, and even more than doubtful. The Duke, who felt that the moment was most critical, spoke to the Brunswick troops with that ascendancy which every great man possesses, made them return to the charge, and putting himself at the head, again restored the combat, exposing himself to every kind of personal danger. Fortunately, at this moment we perceived the fire of Marshal Blucher attacking the enemy's right with his usual impetuosity, and the moment of the decisive attack being come, the Duke put himself at the head of the English foot guards, spoke a few words to them, which were replied to by General Hurrah, and his Grace himself guiding them on with his hand, they marched to the point of the bayonet, to come to close action with the Imperial Guard. But these latter began a retreat, which soon became a complete flight, and the most total rout that had ever been beheld. The Duke continued the pursuit to near Genappe, where he found the venerable Blucher, and where they embraced each other in the most cordial manner in the cross-road of Charleroi. And now finding himself at the same point with the Prussians, and as his army required repose after such a struggle, he left the care of the pursuit to Blucher. Bonaparte, shaken on his usurped throne, without money and without troops to recruit his army, has received so fatal a blow that, according to what the prisoners say, he has no other resource left to him but to cut his throat. I've said in my letter of the 16th that his manoeuvres appeared to me rash before such generals as Blucher and the Duke. The event has fully justified my prediction, and I think that his execution of them could only have arisen from his despair at seeing such enormous forces assailing him on all sides of France, and with the design of striking one of his accustomed blows before the arrival of the Russians and Austrians. Finally, that talisman which, like a charm, held the French soldiery under enchantment, was upon this occasion broken, and Bonaparte has lost forever the reputation of being invincible, which has passed over to a man who for the future, far from employing that glorious reputation in disturbing and enslaving Europe, will convert it into means of her felicity, and of procuring for her that peace of which she is so much in need. The loss of the English is tremendous, and of all those who were immediately about the Duke's person, himself and I alone were untouched in our persons and horses. All the rest were either killed or wounded, or lost one or more horses. The Duke could not refrain from tears at the sight of so many honourable and brave men slain, and the loss of so many friends and faithful companions, and the greatness of the victory alone could alleviate so immense a loss. I cannot conclude this dispatch without mentioning to your Excellency, for the favourable notice of His Majesty, Captain Nicholas Minisa of the regiment of sharpshooters of Doyle. He conducted himself on this last occasion with the greatest valour and intrepidity, and his former conduct, as well as his conduct on that day, renders him worthy that His Majesty should confer on him some mark of his satisfaction. Thank you.
That was historian Silvia Gregorio Sainz reading the recollections of Miguel Alava. Stay tuned to the Napoleonicist, where more instalments of the Voices from the Battlefield series will be released throughout the day.